by what right Brother Jed makes the distinction between a civil law or whatever other law. By what authority does he make this claim? Secondly, this isn't a debate, again, about subjective versus objective morality. But if I have time, I will engage that debate. I will also, if the question comes up in the Q&A, if I don't have time. And I seem to remember a recent use of the words legitimate rape to really disastrous consequences. And I think I'll leave that one there. As a former Army veteran, I spent 6 years in the military. I can tell you, I know of people who were atheists that did lay down their lives for other people and did die. I've seen it firsthand. Let's go back to the New Testament, though. If this idea of proxy redemption, of proxy punishment, isn't immoral enough, look at how it can make people who believe it behave. Look at how the fear of hell and the promise of divine reward can make people act. If you truly believe that if you behave a certain way, if you take certain actions, you will avoid eternal punishment and receive eternal celestial reward, it makes a certain sick sort of logical sense to do and behave that way no matter what it is, no matter what those actions are, no matter what the consequences are. In this, the only life you're sure to have. If you have a child, would you want them to behave well for its own sake, or would you want them to behave well because of fear of punishment or fear of reward? Who's the more moral person? The person who sees a wallet on the ground and returns it to its owner only because they know that there's a camera watching them? Or the person who returns it because they don't know that there's a camera there? Or in spite of it, but doesn't care? If those were your children, who would you be more proud of? Let's do a little more of a contemporary example, though, of why Jesus is immoral, why his teachings are immoral. In Detroit in 2011, there was a little girl named Mariah Smith, and she was 5 years old. Her mother's boyfriend, Darnell Cheatham, abducted her, raped her, and then strangled her to death, afterward burning her body. Imagine this little girl. Imagine how she must have begged. Imagine how she must have cried out and pleaded with Jesus or God to help her. And she received no reply. The teachings of the New Testament, the teachings of Jesus, would tell us that that is moral, that is okay, because that score will be settled later. That Darnell will burn after he dies. And Mariah, it's okay she went through that, because she'll be in a better place later. That's wicked. Now imagine for a moment that Darnell accepts Jesus into his heart while he's on death row. When he's killed by lethal injection after more years on death row than little Mariah was ever even alive, he gets to go to heaven. His sins, no matter how great, are washed away because he accepted Jesus. Surely the idea that Mariah, the victim, had no say in the forgiveness of Darnell is wicked. Surely Mariah must have thought that heaven had become hell when she sees Darnell ascend to heaven. And according to Jesus, according to the New Testament and his teachings, this would be just. Now a further hypothetical. Imagine that while this man, Darnell, was raping her to death, no help from heaven came, and Mariah rejected Jesus from her heart. Because of this, she would be in hell. And Darnell, who would accept Jesus on death row, is now in heaven. This is what the Bible would have you believe. This is what the Bible would have you believe is just. If you believe that the Bible is a good moral guide and that Jesus' teachings are just and moral and that God is just and moral, then this is what you must believe. Let's say for the sake of argument that the God of the Bible does exist. If he did, I would argue that he is a moral monster, and anything inspired by him on the subject of morality should be rejected outright. But first, let's take this example of Mariah a little further. If God has the power to stop it, why didn't he? The common apologist rationalization is free will, that God does not like to interfere with free will. And it's true, if God does intervene, Darnell's free will is violated. But if he doesn't intervene, there's still one person's free will being violated, Mariah's. What's the more moral thing to do, intervene or not? If you had the power to stop someone from raping a child to death, wouldn't you? that makes you more moral than your God, or than Brother Jed's God, excuse me. Let's take a look at what happens when God does intervene. The flood. It's in children's books, for crying out loud. God creates man, knowing ahead of time that he will not meet his expectations, decides to drown the entire world, not just humans, animals, genocide. Jesus approves of this and promises a repeat upon his return in Matthew 24:37. In 2 Chronicles 13, God helps the Judeans kill 500,000 of their fellow Israelites. In 2 Kings 2:23, 42 children tease Elijah for being bald, so God sends some bears to kill the children. Exodus 12:29, God kills all of the Egyptian firstborn because Pharaoh was stubborn, even though God himself had hardened Pharaoh's heart to make him stubborn. Numbers 16:41, some of the Israelites complain that God is killing too many of them. These complaints annoy God, and so God kills another 14,000 of them. God either himself destroys or orders the Israelites to commit genocide against Jericho, against Heshbon, against Bashan, the Midianites, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Moabites, and many other cities and tribes. Yes, God often orders the Israelites to go to war, but he almost certainly orders the genocide in almost every single case, orders genocide. He also, quite often, tells the Israelites to kill all the men, enslave all the children, and take the virgin females as sex slaves. There's some people that have way too much free time on their hands and have actually tallied up God's kill count in the Bible. The devil is 10, by the way. God's kill count is 2,821,364 people. And this doesn't even include the flood, or the Egyptian firstborn, or Sodom and Gomorrah, or any of these other atrocities, because they didn't have actual numbers attached to them. That number is only when the Bible specifically mentions numbers. And when you do estimate the other events, the total is orders of magnitude higher. I can't imagine why anyone would want to take moral instruction from this being. Now, quickly, how many do you want to have time?
You got like 2.5 minutes.
As far as what morality we would replace this with, I don't necessarily know. I don't claim to know where morality comes from. I have guesses. My guess is that maybe it's one part biological, one part cultural. Empathy is thrown in there somewhere. I can put myself in another person's shoes and imagine, bless you, and imagine how it must feel. What actions, if I take them, would affect that person in what way? Do they deserve it? I don't claim to know something like that, and be careful when somebody does. How could he possibly know the mind of God? By what authority does he make this claim? By what authority does my opponent say, well, this law is a civil law, or this law was this law? In fact, Jesus again completely refutes that. Moses completely refutes that. There's no biblical basis for any of that. That's just him talking about what it is, at least I think it is, what it is that he feels is right. Now, another thing about this subjective versus objective morality that we were talking about, or that Brother Jed sort of brought up, it's sort of a non sequitur, in the same way that the deist and theist view. Even if there is something like an objective morality, there's no way that you can say that it's the God of the Bible, or a God, or a person, or anything like that. But there's an implicit contradiction as well. Even if it was true that there's this objective morality, and it's the God of the Bible, he violates his own objective moral standards constantly.